stove jack allows you to outfit your tent so you can vent your flue pipe. We recommend modular stove jacks, meaning you can decide where in the tent you want to put your stove, and then you can set your stove jack in the appropriate place. Stove placement is very dependent on environment and the temperature differential you're looking to achieve between the inside and the outside temperature. If you're in an extremely cold environment, you're going to want the stove closer to the center of your tent, meaning the stove jack is going to have to go up higher on the roof. That's because you want to get the maximum heat transfer from not only the stove, but the flue pipe. If you're camping in milder conditions, you can side exit the GStove, or you can just push it closer to the door to the side of the tent. You'll have less heat transfer from the flue pipe, but it'll be a lot easier to carry wood in and out of your tent without getting everything dirty. CanvasCamp manufactures a few different sizes and styles of stove jacks. They are all modular because we firmly believe that stove placement is entirely dependent on environment and stove type. I'm using the GStove today, which is one of our most popular tent stoves. And the GStove comes with the Exit Mini. The Exit Mini, as you can see, is much smaller than the Exit 1. The Mini is going to be suitable for most flue pipe sizes, but it's ideal for the smaller flue pipe size that comes standard on the GStove. The larger Exit, the Exit 1, can also be used with the GStove and smaller flue pipe sections. However, generally speaking, you want the smallest hole possible for your stove jack, and so if you can get away with a smaller size, do so. Both the Exit 1 and the Exit Mini are designed to be cut to fit to your particular flue pipe diameter. There are measurements written on the outside. However, the best way to figure out the fit is to just insert your flue pipe section snugly into the jack, fold the galvanized rubber portion of the jack over the top of the flue pipe section, and that'll give you an idea of where your cut line should be. This isn't exclusive to the GStove, and this process can be repeated with any tent stove in any flue pipe diameter. Once you're ready to start cutting your Exit, you're going to want to use just cheap serrated knife with a fixed blade. So, start from the top, saw yourself in down to the second rivet, and then you can repeat this process all the way around. So now that we have our rivets cut down to the appropriate diameter for our flue pipe, slide it in, make sure it's a good fit. This seems to be working perfectly. We're going to take our serrated knife and just cut right around the edge. This is going to be a perfect fit. So I'm going to be setting up my stove relatively close to the front door of the tent. That's going to make it a lot easier for me to keep the rest of my tent clean, even though I'm going to be bringing in a lot of wood and taking out ash as I'm using the stove. So now that we have our stove set up in the right place, what we're going to do is add a flue pipe section and mark on the canopy where I want to install my stove jack. We're going to start the stove jack installation process. You're going to need a pencil, your stove jack, a few sections of flue pipe, and a very sharp knife. So you can line up the exit point. If you've used your stove before, you're going to have sit in the flue pipe section. So all you'll do is raise up that flue pipe, press it against your canvas, and give it a little twist, and you've got the perfect exit point outlined. If you haven't used your stove before, you should season it before you use it inside your tent, but if you want to set up your stove jack first, you can just use a pencil, raise, flatten, and then outline. Disassemble your stove jack so you have the rings separated from the galvanized rubber. Set your stove jack against your outline and mark the holes. Once you have your holes defined, you're going to take an extremely sharp knife, ideally with a pointed tip, and poke out holes around the jack. I like to use an X pattern so I know that the nut will fit in there smoothly. So now we have our stove placed, our outline drawn, and our holes punched. We're gonna install the stove jack. So take the jack with just the outside ring attached and one screw through the top fitting and push it through your pre-cut holes. Now push the rest of your screws through until they pop out the other side. This is easier to do with 2 people, but you can accomplish it with just 1. So now we have our stove jack installed from the outside. The next step is to add the inner ring and then screw it on with a washer and a nut. To tighten down the bolts, you'll need someone to stand on the outside of the tent and hold the bolt in place while you twist. You want to make sure that you ratchet these things down really well to get a good seal. You can do it by yourself if you have a Sibley Pro or Pro Tech, which has a zipper bottom that attaches the ground sheet to the sidewall. That's going to let you unzip part of the tent and reach your hands onto both sides to tighten them down, even if you have extremely short arms like me. So now we have our stove jack installed. Both sides are on. The only thing left to do is cut out the center hole. The easiest way to do it is just start from the top and cut an X pattern. Having a super sharp knife is very helpful. So now that we have our first cut, our side cut, meet it in the middle. So now we have open air through there, and we can just trim out these edges, which is a lot easier than trying to cut a circular pattern. So now that we have our stove installed, we can start pushing up flue pipe sections. Best way to do this is to add flue pipe sections from the inside to push the stove jack outwards so you don't get a dip in your canvas. So now that we have our stove jack installed and our stove set up from the inside, the last step is just to add your flue pipe sections from the outside. Done.